Hey everybody, my name's Mike Montgomery, and today we're transforming this outdated back deck into this fresh new one, like this, on Modern Builds. From my knowledge, this deck was built about 8 years ago, and it's definitely time to be refinished. This wood came from a local sawmill, and that's why each of these deck boards aren't the exact same width. But we're gonna get it looking great. To start, I'm going to use the push broom to clean the surface of these deck boards and make sure to remove any dirt or grit that might be caught in the grain before we wash it. I'll be using this bare wood cleaner that's really supposed to revitalize old wood. And don't worry, I made sure to clean this out. There's no weed killer in here. The directions say that you can spray this at maximum strength and let it soak, but it also says you can dilute this up to 1:1, and I did it to that ratio, and it's basically the exact amount I needed for this deck. With any kind of chemical cleaner, make sure you follow the directions. Mine said that I needed to wet down the surface of my deck before I applied the cleaner with a garden sprayer. I guess I could have also mopped and spread this on with a broom if I didn't have a garden sprayer, but these are pretty affordable, and I'll leave a link down below. In fact, I'll leave links to all the products I'm using, that way you can find them. I've seen more aggressive cleaners out there for deck boards that have dried on paint or multiple coats of stain, but these boards weren't crazy old, so they weren't super UV faded, and they've only had one coat of stain. And you're gonna see this product ended up working great. After the cleaner soaked for 15 minutes, it was time to start pressure washing. I used my 15-degree spray nozzle, which worked great for this project. I just needed to adjust how far away my sprayer was from the boards. At first, I was about a foot away, and you can see it removing quite a bit. But here, I went back over the boards about 4 inches away, and that was perfect for my setup. You can really see that old stain and dirt and everything else stripping away. Once it was dialed in, you can see how much I was removing on the first pass. Apparently, there was a little bit of a fire here on the deck that we'll have to address later, but for now, let's keep washing. And I'll be the first to admit, I could sand these boards down without pressure washing, but I'm just removing so much of this old stain that I think I'm gonna get a lot of clear grain to end up popping through in the new finish. Instead of taking a D grade finish to a B grade, I think we're gonna be shooting for an A or an A+, basically brand new wood. And going into this project, I wasn't even sure what species of wood this was, but now that it's all getting revealed, it's so obvious that this is cedar. This stuff being locally grown and milled is just so dense compared to what you'd get at Lowe's or Home Depot. And the boards on the front of this deck covering it, they were in probably the worst shape of any, but they came out looking really clean. I ended up spraying the bottom of this side last, and that really sprayed a lot of dirt pretty much everywhere. So the rest of the way, I sprayed the bottom first, that way I didn't have to double clean everything. And that's the basic rundown of pressure washing the deck. I've got a little bit more to play. I'm gonna turn up the music and just let you guys enjoy. Uh-oh. Dang it. I can't believe I did that twice in a row. These steps get a ton of traffic. You can see how dirty they were. You could not see any wood through all of it. That and the rest of the front boards that are constantly getting hit with lawnmower spray or weed eater dust. They were just so dirty. I did not expect them to get looking so nice. And I figured while I was at it, I would go ahead and clean a little bit of the back side of the house with the pressure washer. And we were done. Okay, I would call this a huge success. We've still got a lot more to do, but this is looking amazing. I'm gonna show you a flashback to the wood before, and then this is what this cedar looks like once everything is dried. Such a big improvement, better than I was expecting. My next step before sanding was to go around and make sure that all of my screw heads were sitting beneath the surface of my deck boards. And now it is time to sand these boards down just to clean them up and take care of that raised grain. This is 120 grit, which should work really well. It's aggressive enough to clean this up, but it shouldn't leave too many swirl marks that you'll see in the stain. There were only a few boards in as rough a shape as you see me working on now, but once it was sanded down, it really matched all the rest. But I did need to address this area where there was a burn on the deck, I'm assuming from a grill. After sanding it down to clean wood to realize it was still a strong board, I wanted to flip it over to see what it looked like. And unfortunately, it was terrible. So I just decided to put this board back in place. I still might replace this later, but I want to keep this project moving for now. Just a little bit of sanding left. I really like the live edge stair treads. Since this is all locally milled, I'm sure it saves time and probably money, but it looks cool too. Regardless, we are now sanding our last section, and after 5 hours or so of sanding, I was worn out. Whew, that was a lot of sanding. There's about a ½ inch difference in the amount that the ends of the board stuck out on the left side compared to the right. You can kind of see that line that I'm marking now. I was careful to plunge my circular saw in straight and then just follow that line. And you'll notice I don't even need to cut the last couple boards to square everything up. And for some reason, this end cut here was really flaring out, so I just squared it up to match the other stairs. On the other side of the deck, the boards were more inconsistently wonky. Sometimes I was cutting off like a ½ of an inch, other times there was none or just a sliver. There's a good chance that these boards were still pretty wet when this deck got built and maybe shrank. And it's still not absolutely perfect, but definitely improved. The one thing that I don't love about live edge stair treads though are the tripping hazards from little branches like this. I just grabbed my jigsaw to show a couple of examples. I made sure to cut it flush, kind of flowing with the existing edge, and then sanded it clean. And now that is a much safer step. I'll give it to the builder, Nick, of this deck. It is very sturdy. By the door, I can jump and there's no wobble. And down at the end, it's the same. But towards the middle, I do think I want to put a little bit of support. It's just a little more give than I want, which is why I've got the cinder blocks. The idea is to crawl underneath there, but first, I've got to get access. And I was surprised at what I found. Oh wow, I knew there were steps down there, but the original concrete pad is really big. It's just super damaged. And this pad is gonna be a good footing. You can see the supports down the line, and I just wanna add one right here in the center. The bottle jack that I'm using is not fancy, but it gets the job done. I used that along with a 2x4 to spread the load and then raise the deck a little bit higher than I want it to eventually sit. That way I can slide this concrete block and some 2x4s underneath, and it can lower to its final position. Now let's lower it down. I think that's probably perfect. But the only way to know is to get back up top and test it out. And I was shocked at how sturdy this ended up being. In fact, I was so pleasantly surprised, I decided to throw another support in the center section of the deck. Even though it was only about half as wobbly as the other side, with the amount of improvement I saw, I wanted to do this. And it really ended up being worth it. You'll see. And now we can let it down. There's just a little knob on the back that you twist to release it. Beautiful. And once again, our sturdiness and flatness have leveled up. So much better. There was a strong part of me that just wanted to close up this side of the deck and move on to the next step, but I figured since I had already done 2 of the 3 sections of this deck, I should brace the raised platform, not here in the middle, but a little bit more forward where there's quite a bit of give. The only thing different with this setup is that the concrete pad didn't extend all the way to this pier, let's call it, so I just stacked up a couple cinder blocks to raise it to the correct height. There we go, that settled a little bit, that's what I was hoping for. Originally, I wasn't going to add this whole section of the bracing to the video because it's not as universal as the other steps when it comes to refinishing or restaining a deck, but I hope it's useful for someone. Moving on. The stain that I'm using is by Behr, and it's called Cedar Natural Tone. This is the same tint that I used on the front porch. I added 2 buckets to a 5-gallon container, that way if there was any tint variation, they would blend together here. And FYI, it got super windy this day, that's why there's no background audio. If you're applying stain by hand, it's best to use an applicator pad rather than a roller. It's supposed to give you a more consistent finish. Now, let's check out this color. Overall, I really like it. It is a little bit darker than the finish that I got on the front porch. I'm assuming that's because this cedar is a little bit more weathered. Plus, this is mostly all heartwood rather than the lighter colored sapwood. Oh, dang it! I had a little bit of a spill. I spread the spill and then I used everything I could from the cardboard before I ditched the roller tray and then started getting the stain right out of the 5-gallon bucket. Although I did still use that tray to kind of squeegee any excess stain off of the pad. The 2 main things you want to focus on when you're applying stain or paint by hand is to go with the grain, and also you don't want to stop and start when you're staining on your final pass. Once you've applied it, smooth it all out with one long pass. All in all, this took 1.5 hours and it's just shy of 200 square feet. Coming up, I'm going to do a comparison, basically a speed test between applying stain by hand and an airless sprayer. But first, I'd like to give a big thanks to the sponsor of today's episode, Squarespace. Squarespace is now introducing Design Intelligence. By combining 2 decades of industry-leading experience with the most cutting-edge AI, building your own website has never been easier. If you do business, Squarespace Payments is the easiest place for all of that in one spot. Onboarding is fast and simple, plus you can give your customers more way to pay with popular payment methods like Klarna, ACH Direct Deposit, Apple Pay, Afterpay, and ClearPay. The last thing I want to feature, and I feature all the time, are Squarespace online courses. If you're somebody with expertise, you can turn your knowledge into income. Squarespace has all the tools to build your own course from scratch, and then you can set your paywall, whether that's a one-time fee or a recurring subscription payment. So to learn more, make sure and follow my link down in the description, squarespace.com/modernbuilds. And then when it's time for your site to go live, don't forget to use my code MODERNBUILDS for 10% off your first site, store, or domain through Squarespace. As always, huge thanks to Squarespace for supporting DIY content and y'all for watching. Now let's finish up this back deck. Time to break out the airless sprayer. The one I'm using has this cool extension arm, and after I added an extra gallon of stain and mixed that up, I switched on the prime pump. It's working! After that, I just did a quick test spray, and we were looking good. I think that's gonna work great. Now I'm probably overdubbing this audio because of the wind. I tried to mask off the wall, but instead, I think the best move is to use a shield. So I've got my Pawpaw Jimmy right here to help out. This cardboard is basically gonna be my backboard, and it'll prevent a lot of that overspray from hitting the house. First of all, I want to say I don't advise painting or spraying anything in high wind, just so you know that. This is going well, right? Yes. Okay, cool. Here we go. But winter is approaching soon, and we've got warm weather with rain approaching tomorrow for the next few days. And everywhere I sprayed, I went back with the applicator pad to even it out. That is so fast. I gotta give a thanks to my Pawpaw Jimmy. I called him up yesterday and said, hey, can you hold a paint shield for me for a few hours? And he kindly said yes, which I appreciate big time. Without him, I would have had to wait or get overspray on the house, which I wouldn't have done. And that only took 12 minutes. So much faster. The spraying tips that I have is to not use too much pressure. You basically want the minimum useful pressure. That way you get the least overspray as possible. Second off, work with the grain just like with the applicator pad. And under perfect conditions, you want your sprayer about 8 or 12 inches away from your substrate. I was a little bit closer to avoid overspray, but that's also why I evened everything out with the applicator pad. That is top complete on the sides. In 40 minutes, we were able to do twice as much as what it took an hour and a half to do by hand. I don't necessarily love the vertical sides of the deck, even though it does a good job of blocking out the framing, but it is a good opportunity to showcase vertical spraying. I think using an applicator pad like this to make sure you don't get any drips or runs is a great idea, wind or not. It also helps redistribute stain to places that are drying faster from where it's puddling up. And for live edges, which these stairs have, even though that's really uncommon for a staircase, it really helped get that stain in there. On this section, I sprayed a little too heavy, you can see, but I was able to use the applicator pad to get rid of all of the drips. The sprayer I'm using is from a company called Vivor, which sells on Amazon. It's a really good value. It's not quite as heavy duty as the Wagner sprayers I've used in the past, but it is a little more affordable. It just kind of depends on what you're going for. If I had to do this project again with this sprayer, I would be totally happy. I had no problems whatsoever. Link is below. We're done, and it only took an hour and a half to do everything else. Here's a quick before shot to remind you of what the deck looked like. Here come the afters. I am very happy with how this came out. And now to answer the big question, should you stain your deck by hand or spray it? Well, it took me an hour and a half to stain one of the 3 sections of the deck by hand and just 45 minutes to do the other 2. That's a speed difference of 4 to 1. Staining this deck today without prep took me 3 hours. If I just did this all by hand, my math says it would have taken 7.5 hours, which is a lot more time and energy. That's what I think, but let me know what you would do in the comments. I really do hope this video was useful. Make sure and like, comment, and subscribe down below with the notification bell. And we'll see you next time on Mike's First Flip, or Modern Builds, whatever it is. Thanks again, Papa Jimmy. Bye! It's Mike's First Flip! Oh my God! Oh golly, how'd I just fall down? That was actually an accident. That was not on purpose. We'll see you next time.